Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. This is your captain, Randy Wright speaking, and as always, I'm joined on our state-of-the-art radio program by my first officer, Jeremy Grapenton. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten your seat belts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show while Jeremy and I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist, as there really is a lot of news and information to get to before we may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Folks, can you believe it? We are almost at our one-year anniversary here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. Time flies when you're having fun. However, I think it's important that we delve into some of the pressing issues that are unfurling before our eyes with respect to current events. There can be no question that this 2016 presidential election cycle has devolved into a fiasco. This is particularly the case with the bizarre ascension of the New York Bulgarian Donald J. Trump. As you are well aware, Trump has many connections with supposed white supremacists. This, however, is no obstacle for those who are the loudest acolytes for the mafioso quafioso. According to Matthew K. Burke at Politistic, one of Trump's leading spokespeople has come out and claimed that both Hillary Rotten Clinton and Trumpolini have connections with the Ku Klux Klan, but that Hillary Rotten Clinton's is far worse than Donald J. Trump's. Now, this spokesperson at the center of the article is none other than Scotty Nell Hughes. Hughes is one of those opportunistic members of the Tea Party who decided to sell her soul in order to join the Trump train. This is the sort of sycophantic nonsense that has become a hallmark of this disastrous 2016 presidential election cycle. I wish that I had words of comfort and solace to convey with regards to this. However, there are none to be had. While this may appear to be a non-issue, at least on the surface, the fact of the matter is that Trump slipped up with disavowing former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, David Duke, in past media interviews. One of the things that Hughes, however, failed to address during her CNN interview is the fact that Hillary Clinton has received current Klan support, whereas Donald's support comes from a former Grand Wizard. You know, that's something you would think could be carried over into modern parlance. That would be a way to defend your candidate, but no, they're not good at that. Nevertheless, this is the sort of nonsense that has come to the forefront in this 2016 election cycle. Folks, we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have oftentimes told you to never take the things we say at face value. Therefore, I'm going to go ahead and cue up the original audio that was put forth by this CNN person and let you hear it for yourselves, and then we will delve into it a little deeper. So let me get that queued up, and then we can really delve into it. So here we go. I'm going to switch over now.
Wait, how is that, Scotty? How is that trapping him?
Well, no, at the time, he didn't know the whole entire situation. He was just being told for the first time that somebody was endorsing him. He didn't know if it was true or not. He didn't know the whole, he didn't know that David Duke had endorsed him.
That's not the case. He was asked, do you disavow support from Klan leader David Duke?
And he did multiple times after. His word was, I don't know anything about such an endorsement. Unlike Hillary Clinton, who still has the endorsement of the California Grand Dragon KKK leader today, and has out there making promotional videos on his own accord, but still putting it out there. Hillary Clinton has yet to disavow him. So there's ties.
But here's the difference. It's that when Trump said that he had no idea that David Duke was a member of the Ku Klux Klan, it was a little bit disingenuous because back in 2000, if you recall, he had penned an op-ed article in which he said the number one reason that he was leaving the Reform Party that was started by Ross Perot was because of membership of people like Pat Buchanan and also David Duke. So there's a disconnect there. Someone is lying, and I happen to think it's Scotty Nell Hughes.
Well, it's not that she's just lying about it. She's trying to embolden this lesser of two evils thing. Because basically what she's saying there is, well, yeah, Donald Trump had support from this, but that's okay. Even though he got the support, he disavowed it, but Hillary Clinton still has support. So that makes her more evil than Donald Trump. Evil is still evil. We know, aside from David Dookie, let's look at his connections with other white supremacists. One of the largest white supremacists to ever walk the face of the planet, George Soros.
Mm-hmm.
He's co-owner of Trump Towers in Chicago with Donald Trump. Has he disavowed George Soros yet? Nope. Why not?
His followers are going to sit there and say there's no connection. But Jeremy, you just can't make this stuff up.
No,
it's as though the entire election cycle is centering around a cult of personality. We warned of the dangers of this going back nearly a year now. Nevertheless, the Lion Branch Trumpidians chose to disregard our near prophetic warnings, and it leaves us in this untenable and unsustainable situation as well as scenario. I mean, there really is no other way that we could discuss it other than to frame it in what they have done. And it's not as though these things are clandestine or that they're hidden from view. They're out there, open and obvious for anyone who's looking at it with any modicum of objectivity.
Sure. And it just takes a rational person with at least half a frontal lobe to even see what's going on with this. I mean, throughout the whole election campaign cycle, we've been doing nothing but exposing the connections with Trump, who he's been dealing with. And people are saying, well, you don't do this with Hillary. We don't need to. We already know what she's all about. If people don't know what Hillary Clinton is all about by now, then they should not even participate in the electoral process. We don't.
And here's
we don't
the other thing. Here's the other thing. Hillary is low energy. Hillary is just having to sit back and coast. I don't even think Hillary's going to pay attention half the time with anything that's going on in her White House because she's tired. She doesn't have to. She's going to have her little underlings do it. And that means that it's not going to be quite as bad as people are trying to make it out. Trump, on the other hand, has already shown a willingness to not listen to people and to disregard things that are important. I mean, basically going out and asking defense personnel why it is we can't nuke other nations. I mean, seriously? That on top of not knowing what the nuclear triad is? This is disastrous.
Well, and again, it points to the fact it creates a situation to where he's given full reins, and we know with his ego, he's even divulged it and told people, when I walk into a room and demand something, people do it. He's not going to have his underlings do these nefarious things for him. He's going to do it himself, and he has such a maniacal, egotistical persona that he's placed for himself that he said right on national television, I can walk out in the middle of Fifth Avenue, use his finger and thumb as a gun, making the bang motion, saying he can shoot somebody in the face and he won't lose any votes. That is a very telling thing. He's putting it out there to people so that they can see what he's all about, but they're so wrapped up in this quaftopia, this fantasy that he's created for them. It's unreal. And, then it goes again, it plays full force and effect right into this whole lesser of two evils thing. We have all these individuals saying, well, if you don't vote for Trump, it's a vote for Hillary. Well, let's see. Doesn't that apply the same logic speaking as if you don't vote for Hillary, then it's a vote for Trump?
Yeah,
it's what's good for the goose is good for the gander, but they're not going to look at that and say, well, I'll never vote for Hillary. I'll never vote for Hillary. Well, guess what? Then you're automatically going to vote for Trump. Either way, you're so blinded, you're going to exercise your right to vote in order to institute a means or a level of evilness.
Of course.
But
it really seems as though we have reached the bottom of the barrel. The graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media are doing nothing to cover the matters of serious importance. Rather, Donald J. Trump provides a source of distraction. He is a distraction, thereby allowing the media to disregard the negatives of Hillary Clinton. It makes one wonder whether he's doing all of this on purpose. It's my humble personal opinion and belief that he is, in fact, doing this on purpose. I think we must ask ourselves a serious yet nagging question. If Donald Trump was a plant, would there be anything that he'd be doing differently than he has done thus far in this election cycle? I believe that the answer to that rhetorical question is both open and obvious. There is nothing he could have done any differently if he had hoped to recklessly divide the base of the gutless opposition party, or GOP. There really is no way to candy coat or sugarcoat that, folks. Honestly, I'm not sure what Hughes was attempting to accomplish on that CNN interview. She appeared lost, discombobulated even, but it's doing a great disservice to the conservative movement. Donald J. Trump is like a bad joke that is going to allow the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media to tar all conservatives with this broad, stereotypical media brush. It's truly disgusting. Has America fallen so far as a nation that these are really the best candidates we can produce? I personally believe that these United States of America are far greater than what we have seen rise to the surface throughout this stupid election cycle. America demands and deserves better than what she has received thus far. I'm sure that the vast majority of our cherished listening passengers and audience members would agree with my sentiment here. We can and must do much better than what we have done this year.
Well, it kind of reminds me of, people limiting their abilities. They know what they're capable of doing. They have the wherewithal. They have the intellectual capacity to achieve great things. Okay, but yet they're not allowing themselves to reach that potential or exhibit that potential. That's what happens when people fall into the trap of complacency and fear, because that's exactly what's happened. Can we do better than Trump and Hillary? Absolutely. Absolutely. We had a slew of candidates that would have been better than Trump on the Republican ticket. Absolutely. There's people that you and I both know, Randy, that would be just as good, if not better, than those candidates as well. There is a groundswell of untapped potential in this country, and the more that we allow ourselves as a nation to ignore that and distance ourselves from that and not have that connection of what it truly means to be an ultimate wielder of sovereignty in this country, and not have an understanding of our shared constitution, the more we're going to become divorced, the more things are going to get balkanized, and complacency is just going to grow. And not only complacency, but fear is just going to run rampant.
Well, of course it is. And this is all part of the tactics that the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists use.
Well,
it's all to try and weaken the fabric of our country. Why? Because then they can replace us. They think that they can make us more docile. They think that then they can pervert the minds through indoctrination of the up-and-coming generations so that they don't know who they are. They don't know what their proper national character, heritage, spirit, but above all, identity is. And of course, that's one of the most wicked things that they've done. And they have worked so meticulously, relentlessly, tirelessly towards this for the past century and a half now. And we, on the conservative side, because we realize that truth and justice and all of those savory aspects of our culture and our community are on our side, have just devolved into this live and let live mentality. That surely they'll just leave us alone. Surely the truth will shine through. Well, no, it won't. Not when they have spent every day for the past century and a half attempting to redefine what this nation is and what it will be. We didn't get here overnight, and we are certainly not going to resolve it overnight. We have to have a meticulous plan, and we must be as stalwart and hard-hearted as these frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists if we ever hope to aspire to put this nation back onto the path to prosperity. I'm sorry, that's just the way it has to be.
Well, in order for the light of truth to shine through, like you were talking about.
Mm.
We have to be able to ignite the spark that's going to light that torch. That spark resonates with us. We have to ignite that spark, because if we don't have the spark, we don't have the ember, and we can't nurture that ember into a glowing flame. That's what has to happen. See, that flame has all but been extinguished. And if we continue to do these things that we're doing, it's just like, Zygmunt Dobbs warned about 60 years ago, 50 years ago. Okay. He's been worrying about this. And again, people have not taken heed to his warnings, just like many people have not taken heed to our warnings. And the more we talk about this, the more we delve into these things, and the more we warn people about this, it seems that we're beating our heads against the wall. Some people are getting it, some people are understanding, and they're starting to wake up, and that's great. But we need more. We need more people to wake up, because here's the fact of the Fabians. Like you said, a century and a half they've been doing this. A century and a half. They're not going to completely take over everything overnight. It would be impossible for them to do it. It would be counterproductive and counterintuitive to their agenda. They're going to continue to milk this and do this through incrementalization over time. You and I, Randy, if things keep going the way that they're going, you and I are going to be long gone before they take full, complete, total control, because that's the way they have it designed. That's their strategy, and that's how it works. They're not going to be able to say, even with Hillary, and this is the thing that bothers me about people being afraid of Hillary. They think because if she's elected, when she's elected, because she's going to be elected, Trump cannot beat her. But they think it's instantaneously going to switch over and everything's just going to go away. The Constitution's not going to mean anything. People's rights, they're going to come for our guns and all this other stuff. Folks, that's all hype. She is not that dumb. She is not stupid enough to try and make that as an instantaneous and spontaneous event as people want to build it up to be. The reason why they're building up that hype is because they're getting all this information, all these talking points from the other side, which happens to be the crutch that she's using, Donald Trump and his campaign. That right there spells out disaster beyond belief. That is the true duping of this nation, is what it's come down to.
Right, right. And Jeremy, one of the things that is still garnering media attention is Donald Trump's apparent off-the-cuff trip to Mexico. It has been claimed that he was invited by President Pinata to visit the country, which he has lambasted throughout the primary process and indeed this entire electoral cycle. Making matters worse is the fact that he has gone forth and served to distract media attention away from the negatives that were about to implicate Hillary Clinton even further, at least in the arena of public opinion. In fact, Eric Erickson over at The Resurgent has claimed that this is a predictable pattern with respect to the New York Vulgarian. But for me, the biggest problem is not even that he made the trip. Rather, it's the fact that he'd agreed with President Pinata that America's lax gun laws led to a majority of the problems between the neighboring nations. Neither one of the politicians, and yes, I am calling Trump a politician, made a direct reference to the drug cartel problem currently plaguing Mexico, nor did they mention the ongoing illegal gun smuggling operation run by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, all designed to run guns illegally into Mexico. I, of course, am referencing Operation Fast and Furious and Gunrunner. Why would Trump agree with these fallacious claims made by the president of Mexico? Unless, of course, he is in full agreement that America's gun laws are far too lax. After all, Trump has shown in the past that he agreed with the Democrats in their scheme to strip and deprive decent, law-abiding, hard-working, red-blooded American citizens of their fundamental and inalienable God-given right to keep and bear firearms. Recall that he supported the no-fly, no-buy, and if you dare mention due process, we cry bill. In other words, he has fully supported these Fabian socialist tactics to incrementally encroach upon and abridge our rights. But, as you've mentioned on past episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence the Wright Flyer, without our rights we are left with nothing. That's the simple truth of the matter, folks. It really is that black and white and cut and dry. There's no escaping the fact that all of this is disastrous. And again, the way to place this nation back onto the path of prosperity is to return to basics. As always, basics in the United States of America can be found in the clear and concise language of our shared United States Constitution. Again, no way around this, folks, yet tragically, none of the candidates for the mainstay political parties supports the Constitution in its full scope and capacity, and that is the problem we are facing.
Well, that trip to Mexico with President Peñata, it just proved with those statements and him being in agreement with that Chipotle mental midget saying our gun laws are lax. Again, it points directly to the fact that he sees no value in the Constitution, because for anybody to support any kind of gun legislation whatsoever, they are anti-Constitution. Period. There's no other way about it. And people say, well, that's not true. Yo, it is true. It's absolutely true. Because for the simple fact of the matter, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And if you're even contemplating legislation or even mulling around the idea inside your quaff-laden skull that, well, maybe we need a little bit of gun control laws, we need to prevent bad people from getting guns. Guess what? Hey, Crayola Picasso, bad people getting guns, they don't care what kind of laws you make. In fact, the more laws you make, the easier it is for them to get guns. It gives them more incentive to get guns illegally.
There's a historical aspect that I want to use here. You remember Bonnie and Clyde, one of the most famous and notorious outlaw couples in the Southwest, and indeed in the entire United States of America. They went and made that romantic 1960s movie that was not even closely related to what they did. But you know what Clyde's favorite gun was? He called it a whippet gun. And what it was a BAR that he sawed the barrel off of. Mm-hmm. And at that time, in the 1930s, this was after the, that first gun control act was put into place where it would try and stop people from owning machine guns. Well, so how did he get this military arm that wasn't sold to the public? Why, he went into the National Guard's armory and stole them. Yep. So let's see. How would gun control stop that? How would gun control prevent? Oh, well, less people would die. No, wrong. It wasn't law-abiding citizens that ran out and killed people. It was an outlaw who knew enough how to steal. In fact, most of the police officers who are shot by their own sidearm, their own service sidearm.
Yeah, or firearms that have been stolen and used in other crimes. Mm-hmm. See, and again, people don't understand this. See, it really bothers people when pesky little facts get in the way, Randy.
Of course,
it really does. You take the individuals that want to defend their lives, defend their families' lives. They own firearms, and it's not just for the defense of their family, but it's the defense of the nation, to prevent tyrannical governments from taking over, or our own government becoming tyrannical themselves. I mean, before the Constitution was even written, that was addressed and laid out in the Declaration of Independence.
Well, and if you stop and think back as to what it was that actually sparked that long, drawn-out, bloody affair known as the American War of Independence, was it because the British were... was it because the British were there trying to take away their tea and crumpets? Was it because the British were there to take away their lanterns so they couldn't hang them up to have pretty lights in the church tower? Or was it because they were there to take away their firearms and their powder?
Their means of preserving their rights and their life against the tyrannical regime.
Now here's one more, Jeremy. Here's another one. In October 2nd of 1835, in the little town of Gonzales, Texas, Generalissimo Antonio Lopez de Santana, this way we can connect it to Pinata, came in to Texas and sent his dragoons to the little town of Gonzales to take a cannon. So was he there to take away their, tobacco? Was he there to take away their reading utensils or their free speech? Or was he there to take away their means of defending themselves? And more importantly, is there a pattern here? Are we beginning to see a discernible and undeniable pattern with respect to tyrants and despots and those who love freedom?
There's always a pattern. When you have individuals that are hell-bent on evil doing, there's always a pattern. And the pattern is predictable because it begins the same way, it is carried out the same way, and the ultimate ends that are achieved are the same result every single time. We could point to Mao, we could point to Lenin,
Hitler,
Mussolini, Mao, yeah, all of them.
Yeah.
Evil individuals with evil notions and evil intentions being put in power and given the reins of authority to implement their dastardly deeds.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot afford that as a nation. We will not allow that to continue as a nation.
And you know what all of that shows, Jeremy, is recall that Karl Marx said in both Das Kapital that he helped pen back in the 1840s and then in the Communist Dialectic and all of the things that form the bedrock foundation of that twisted and radical and fundamentalist fanatical mindset was that history is linearly progressive. But actually, when you look at the way that these tin pot dictators are, there's always a cycle. And there's always a pattern. And it's not directly linear. It's always a slow buildup, a boil, a cycle. Yes. And it's about taking away the fundamental and inalienable God-given rights of the citizens. You mentioned Mao Zedong. One of the things that he did when he first ascended to power in China and created the laughably named People's Republic of China was he instituted a program known as the Cultural Revolution. That's where they ran around trying to destroy all of the vestiges of the past. Why? Because these frothing at the mouth, just left-wing ideologues and terrorists, for lack of a better term, just have to destroy anything and everything that predated them or preceded them because they know that that allows a rallying point for those who are opposed to them. And therefore they have to use coercion and duress to force their twisted machinations down the throats of an unwilling people. That is a cycle. And that is just repeatedly there, ad nauseum, every time one of these little wannabe potentates tries to take over.
Sure. Thus, we have revisionist history, because that was actually the birth of revisionist history.
Of course it was.
And if you get rid of all the historical vestiges, anything that points to something that is counterintuitive or counterproductive to that agenda, you remove it. That allows you two things. Number one, over time, people forget, because if it's not taught or if it's revised to fit your talking points and your agenda, it makes people more adaptable. Number two, it completely derides, it takes everything away from people having any sort of facts to be able to pinpoint what's going to happen or to even be able to predict what's coming down the pipe. See, it's impossible to completely remove history. It's just not going to happen, because you're always going to have individuals that are going to say, nope, that's not how it happened. This is how it happened. Again, Randy, like you mentioned before, history, his story. There's always going to be somebody alive that says, no, this is what happened. There's always going to be somebody that documents these things. We had it with Michel Nostradamus, with the whole Inquisitions and the Illuminati, which, by the way, folks, does not exist anymore. It was disbanded. It was disbanded after the Inquisitions. Why? Because it didn't serve any more other purpose. There was no need for it to exist, because its whole auspice of existing was what? Preserving historical relics and artifacts and literature so that people had them to base other things off of in the future. So we had references.
Right. And that's what you'll always have. You'll have independent-minded individuals like you and I who go out and search for the primary documents. And then the amazing thing is, it was just recently, a couple months ago, that the People's Republic of China, what a stupid name for a communist government, came out and said that, yes, the Cultural Revolution was a mistake. Well, of course it was a mistake, you idiotic communist dipwads. Why would you go out there and think that it would be anything else? Oh, yes, it's because your leaders can make no mistake. They are flawless. They are infallible human beings, except there is no such thing, except for Jesus Christ. And last I checked, Mao Zedong didn't like Jesus Christ. Come to think of it, none of the communists liked Jesus Christ. But anyway, Super Mexican over there at the Wright Scoop has put out a piece exploring Donald J. Trump's answer to who exactly God is to him. And notice, it's kind of a nice segue there. The answer is rather laughable, long, and meandering. It just goes to show that Trump is not clear or knows anything about with God. He doesn't care about it. And I believe that this is a major problem because you really can't be any more shallow in intellectual depth than Trump was in his response. For me, this is just more proof that Trump is not really a very religious man. Now, we do have freedom of religion here in the United States is guaranteed by the First Amendment to the Bill of Rights. That said, it does not go so far as to say that the people should not have their own moral and religious principles as well as convictions. But if you recall, Trump has said that he never once asked God for forgiveness. His laughable reason for this? The fact that he believes he has done nothing wrong throughout the course of his 70 years on God's green earth. I'll never understand how the so-called evangelical movement in the United States could ever have supported this laughable candidate. It goes to show that moral decay, brought about by the twin cancerous doctrines of political correctness and moral relativism, has really worked to unravel our societal framework. It truly is a sad reflection of the current events that ail and afflict this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. But to demonstrate just how bad Trump is with respect to religious issues, I have a soundbite from the Wright Scoop, and I'm going to get that queued up here in just a second. And what is so funny about this is that the answer he delivered in response to this reporter's question is about his faith. And I'm not sure that I have faith that he can give a clear answer. He never really has, but let me go ahead and queue up that soundbite right now. Here we go.
Tell me about God. When I say God, tell me about God. Who is God to you? What are some of your thoughts on this? Clearly, you're a smart man. You're smart. Have you played this before, or how have you contemplated it?
I see God as the ultimate. You know, you look at this. You look at this incredible. Here we are in the Pacific Ocean. Mm-hmm. How did I ever own this? I bought it 15 years ago. I made one of the great deals they say ever. This piece of land. I have no mortgage on it. I will certify and represent to you.
We'll see that.
And I was able to, buy this and make a great deal. That's what I want to do for the country. Make great deals. We have to bring it back. But God is the ultimate. I mean, God created this. And, here's the Pacific Ocean right behind us. So nobody, there's nothing like God.
What the hell was that? What the hell was that? Well, here's the Pacific Ocean. I bought the Pacific Ocean. I got perfect hair forever. I got smally hands. I mean, give me an ever-loving break.
It's almost like he places himself with this direct line to God, as God is the ultimate real estate agent, and God creates the real estate, and Donald Trump buys it up. Really? Are you that shallow and narcissistic to where you think? No, you buffoon! You buffoon! Why don't you just
make
shut
this
the
stuff
hell
up?
and go straight to hell? Why? Folks, if there's any reason, if there's ever been a reason in our whole entire time, again, folks, 6 days from now marks our 1-year anniversary. So I'm going to say we've been doing this for about a year. In the whole span that we've been doing this show, if there is nothing else that has proved that this guy is a blithering buffoon, let that be it.
Yeah. You know, I don't know about you folks, but for me, there was no clear answer here. Trump was just all over the place.
There never is.
He was clearly uncomfortable giving his response. That's not what we need, because someone like Hillary will be able to eviscerate him on the debate. Throughout the general election process, on that debate stage, she's just going to tear him apart, and that's just the way it is. There's no way around that.
Randy, it goes back to what I said a few months back. She doesn't have to debate him on any of the issues, any of the pressing issues that actually matter to individuals or the voters. All she has to do is bring up things like this, bring up his failed marriages, and even she can even bring up her own failed marriages to actually put them to rest and actually use her own husband as a jumping off point to destroy him on his failed marriages. He wants to make deals for the country. He wants to do this. He wants to be great for the country, but he can't even manage his own marriages.
On the Pacific Ocean.
He has a mortgage on the Pacific Ocean. No mortgage on the Pacific. He owns it. He owns it. No mortgage. No mortgage. It's mortgage. It's a bigly thing, and I just don't do bigly things because you know what? That's what it is. Shut the hell up. And all she would have to do is look at him and say, Donald, you're a buffoon. You're a liar. Yes, I'm a liar too, but you know what? At least my lies are believable. Yours aren't.
Well, there's a train of thought to follow with her because she's able to form a coherent sentence.
Yes.
This idiot can't.
Yes.
He really can't. But
she could use her own fallacies. Everything that is wrong with her, she could use that to destroy him.
Sure. But, you know, one of the things that we have oftentimes reiterated on previous episodes here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, is that Donald J. Trump is not serious about the illegal alien problem. We knew that all along he was not serious about enforcing border security. All one has to do is look at his previous statements during the 2012 election cycle that he thought that deporting those who entered this nation illegally was mean-spirited. And I've got the sound clip of this, too. Now, you will have to forgive me, folks, for the sound quality of this, because I've only been able to find this video again on somebody who just had, like, their handy cam there and was filming it off of their television, because it's like YouTube went and scrubbed it. Now, I'm not into quaffspiracy theories here, but it's just one of those things. But let me cue this up, and keep in mind that this was from June 18th, 2012, and tell me if this sounds like what Donnie has been saying all throughout the primary process, or if it's a little bit more like what he's modifying his thing to be today. So here we go. I've got it queued up here.
A very complicated subject, and you don't just play it one way. But the people that have been here for years, that have, you know, been hard workers, have good jobs, are supporting a family, it's very, very tough to just say, by the way, you know, 22 years, you have to leave, get out. So, you know, a solution has to come up with. It is a very, very difficult situation. I'm one of the world's very conservative people, but I have to tell you, on a human basis, how do you throw somebody out that's lived in this country for 20 years?
So how do you feel about how Romney has handled this so far over the weekend, what he said and what he's not said?
Well, I think he's handled it good. He's handled it with compassion, but he also said, I want a permanent solution. This is not a solution. This is just really politics. He wants a permanent solution to it, and I think he'll come up with it.
This is just politics. I thought he wasn't a politician.
Wait a second. I thought Romney was bad. I thought Romney was no good. Romney's establishment. Hold on a second here. He just said that I think Romney would come up with a solution and this and that. Really?
Huh. Well, that was back in 2012. Yeah. And remember, he had endorsed Romney. But you can't make this stuff up, folks. No. So when he softens, It's more like he's just going back to his originally held beliefs. How can anyone trust him after he went forth and said something of such a magnitude as that? This is the very issue that he used to propel himself to the top of the field. Trump managed to secure the nomination based off of nothing short of a lie. Yet, those who've been bamboozled simply refuse to open their eyes to this simple truth. And that's one of the primary reasons why we face the untenable situation that we currently do. Trump's inconsistency should be a point of contention, but a great many of the Lion Branch Trumpidians boldly proclaim that we simply cannot look into his past. Why? It's as though they'll do anything to disregard the words that have come from his own mouth. They don't want to face reality, or to face the reality even of just how bad of a candidate he truly is. Or do I need to say how badly a candidate he truly is to put it in Trumperisms for them? That's a disgrace in and of itself. Yeah, Trumponics. Yeah, yet, as we've stated before, you must look at a candidate's past statements. Reason being is you must discern whether he or she is going to stand up for the Constitution. In the case of Trump, it's more than obvious that he won't. That's not to say that Hillary is good with respect to the Constitution. Far from it. You see, when you keep voting for the lesser of two weasels, you still wind up with weasels in the end.
Well, that is a great segue into something that actually pertains to this whole illegal alien issue, and an option for people, or what some people would be thinking to themselves that is a viable option other than Trump or Hillary. Gary the Dope Johnson.
Oh, yeah, we can't call them illegal aliens or immigrants.
Right,
or whatever.
They have to be undocumented workers. I'm sorry, Gary the Doper Johnson, you're wrong. You're wrong, because here's the thing. Undocumented workers, that's nothing more than you utilizing political correctness so that you don't offend them. And he even said, it's offensive to them. I don't care. Since when do people have the right to not be offended? They don't.
Well, you want to know what's offensive to me is the fact that they entered our country outside the proper scope and purview of the law, that they continue to break our laws, and that our politicians are seemingly giving them higher priority than to citizens. But last I checked, the politicians in this nation and our representatives are supposed to represent citizens, not illegal aliens.
Yes.
You see, that's one of the great disconnects that we're facing. It's one of the great problems that has led to this cornucopia of bovine and equine excrement that has just been piling up, and they keep trying to tell us it smells like a bunch of roses. Well, they can go straight to hell, because nothing could be further from the truth. We have got to get back to basics in this country, and that means standing up for the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty here. And that's not illegal aliens. That's American citizens, whether they be natural born or naturalized. And the fact that Trump is sitting there saying it's inhumane to ship people back, and again, he's trying to say we need a humane solution. You know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of that drivel from George W. Bush during his tenure in office, where he said that he's a compassionate conservative. Thereby presupposing that somehow conservatism is lacking in human compassion. It's nonsense.
You know what also reminds me of, and before I tell you what that is, also in that clip, we heard Trump say he's one of the world's largest conservatives. Really? Really? But humanistically, I'm sorry, but you know what? In order to be a conservative, you have to be a human first, and you have to be able to understand what a conservative is. A conservative is a person who conserves the means of the way things are. Okay? Mm-hmm. A conservative, to a certain degree, you and I are conservatives. We want to conserve the Constitution the way it is, as far as what the implementation of it is, the original thought and intents and purposes of the Constitution. Now, what this reminds me of, aside from George W. Bush, it reminds me of Margaret Sanger's idea about eugenics. It reminds me of Hitler's prevention of disease for progeny law, aka the national health care law. that was implemented in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
That word humanely has been utilized by Fabians and leftists for over 150 years to make people feel good, to play on people's emotions. That's all Trump, again, is doing. He is using that as a political correct means of putting a feel-good spin on something rather than bucking up and saying, look, these people are here illegally. We can't just uproot people. The hell we can't. Tell that to Dwight D. Eisenhower when he had Operation Wetback back in the 50s.
Right.
I guarantee you. Here's the problem. Okay, so what the issue is, if we don't uproot them, if they're here illegally, we do not deport them, which the law specifically requires us to do, that sets precedent for, I don't know, jihadi terrorists to come here, do the same thing that illegal aliens are doing, having anchor babies, and then guess what? It sets precedent. Well, you couldn't do it to them, you can't do it to us because we'll take.
Well, they've already done that.
Yeah, yes.
They've already done that. You remember the Chechnyan Mario brothers there at the Boston Marathon bombing?
Yes.
And what about Omar Mateen and Malik?
The Tampa Bay nightclub.
Right. And then there's Malik and Farouk that had done the San Bernardino thing.
Yes.
They were here as aliens, at least in the case of Malik, and Farouk's father had immigrated here. And so if he had come illegally and had just put out a baby, then yeah, they would have done the same thing.
And the dangerous repercussions that'll come from this later, again, this is incrementalization. They're building up to something coming to fruition all at once. Okay. The danger to that is having known enemies of the United States being able to gain a foothold here. It would be no different than back in 1776 with the British coming here. After we've declared our independence, the British establishing ground here and gaining a foothold here, and then being able to build themselves up to take out our system of governance from within. That's what this precedent is leading up to. Now, a lot of people say, well, you know, Mexicans, and it's not just, this is another thing that pisses me off to no end. It's not just Mexicans, people from Mexico that are illegal aliens. We have illegal Chinese, we have illegal Arabs or Muslims, we have illegal Indonesians coming here, we have illegal Russians, North Koreans, all walks of life, and from all Irish. I mean, people from the IRA, even though the IRA, well, you know, it's not. Yeah, guess what, folks? Organizations like the IRA don't just, you know, shrivel up and dry on the vine and wither away. There's always rogue elements to that. Proof? George Soros is still alive. Nazism and socialism is alive and well. Just because they're not in full functioning capacity in a certain given region or area of the globe doesn't mean that they don't exist.
Right.
You want to eliminate problems, you have to go to the root of the problem. Illegal aliens, regardless from whatever walk of life or background they come from, that is the root problem. You have to cut the head off of that snake before it branches off. It becomes a hydra.
Now, one of the major points of contention with Trump throughout this 2016 cycle thus far has been his unwillingness to release his tax returns. For the longest time, he's gone forth and claimed that he simply cannot because he is under an audit. However, Richard Nixon released his tax returns while being audited. So this claim is false and misleading on the part of the mafioso quafioso. Yet that's just par for the course in this disgusting election cycle. Who can forget the fact that he demanded Romney release his tax returns during the 2012 election cycle? Hypocrisy is not a pretty thing still. Trump seems to believe that this won't do anything with respect to his cult-like followers. He's convinced that he could go out onto Fifth Avenue and shoot someone and his supporters wouldn't even bat an eye. Is this really what passes for presidential these days? Have we really truly fallen this far as a nation? Well, Mike Pence, Trump's VP pick, has added fuel to the fire. He went before the cameras of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media and proclaimed that both he and Trump would release their tax returns. Of course, with Trump, he had to add the caveat that it would only be after the audit ended. Why? We already know this isn't a prohibition to releasing the information. It's one thing for a private citizen to refuse to do so, but Trump is seeking to be our next president. Therefore, he doesn't enjoy the same privacy as the rest of us. Folks, you really can't make this stuff up. It's as though the nation has plunged itself into the twilight zone. Neither one of these candidates are looking out for the best interests of the American people. What a travesty, particularly when one considers that this was our election cycle to win. We've thrown victory to the winds and decided to abandon our principles altogether. Mark my words, folks, there will be a reckoning for this. I guarantee it.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and just throw this out here. One of the main reasons why he wants to wait until after the audit is so that the American people won't see the information that we've been divulging for the better part of 6 months with his connections to Russian mobs, his connections to George Soros. Because, see, with the tax returns, anytime you have a business dealing when you're at the stature that Trump is at, you have to report those things. You know, money that exchanges hands and whom that those hands exchange, you know, the money with. He doesn't want people to know that. The timing for him to release it is not. He's trying to dictate the timing in order for these things to happen. See, what needs to happen, and this is all part of destroying the Fabian agenda. If you disrupt their timing, even just a little bit, you set them back. It's all part of that whole principle. In order for the propaganda to be effective, it has to be boomerang proof. Well, it's not boomerang proof if you disrupt their timing. If they control the timing, they dictate how things play out. You take the timing away from them, just like with anything else. You disrupt the timing of anything. Your timing chain for your vehicle. If that's disrupted in any way, shape, or form, your vehicle won't start. And if it does start, it won't stay running. You have to disrupt their timing. And what better time than now for people to demand Trump to release his tax returns? Again, Nixon was under an audit and he released his. So the whole stance in the argument that Trump makes is a crap-filled one. Well, I have to wait till... No. You don't get to dictate how things are done.
But that's what he's thought he's always been able to do. That's what he's always tried to do. He's always thought that he's king of the hill because he's got such bigly wealth. But, of course, that's a bunch of bovine excrement. He is still just like the rest of us because we here in the United States are a nation of laws and not of men. And that's just the way it has to be.
And that right there defines him as an elitist.
Of course it does. Of course it does. But, you know, there's another sinister aspect of the 2016 election cycle. We all know that the detente wing of the gutless opposition party, or GOP, was on their heels. They had violated the numerous promises they made all throughout the 2014 midterm elections. Consequently, they found themselves in hot water with the base of the party. This is what led to the outpouring of outrage that has dominated this entire election cycle. Look, I fully understand the anger. Hell, we're angry about it too. However, they're now using the bizarre ascendancy of Trump to cover their tracks, while they attempt to redefine the party as a whole. It's why Rinse and Repeatus tried to bend over backwards for Trump during the RNC back in July. They were proactively trying to purge and are proactively trying to purge the party of its conservative base. There's really no way to deny the fact that this has been their end game all along. Throughout the years, Karl Rove, the alleged kingmaker and spam bucket head for the establishment wing, has gone out and claimed that conservatives cannot win elections. Yet, when you examine the historical record, you'll find that nothing could be further from the truth. It's more of their attempts to gain power, and they'll stop at nothing to do so. Trump is providing subterfuge for them. Trump's henchmen did what they could to sabotage Kelly Ward in Arizona. Keep in mind that Trump has no love lost for the '08 candidate, being, of course, John McCain, the maverick. That said, in the grand scheme of things, their outlooks align more than they do with the real base of the party. That's what makes this election cycle so intellectually disingenuous. We have charlatans controlling the reins of the party, and then poor Kelly Ward had made one mistake. If I could say she made one mistake, it was that she had endorsed Trump.
Yeah.
Whoops.
And here's the thing about that. In a way, it could be that she endorsed Trump because as to not commit complete political suicide. To do it to, make sure that she could, save face, so to speak. Now, do I condone that? No, but I understand, a position that she was in. She lost to McCain because of Trump. So it's almost like she was the
damned
nail
if she does and damned if she doesn't.
She's the nail that stuck up and got hammered down is what it was. She ultimately succumbed to that. Now, is it completely condonable? No. But can we understand to a certain degree why she did it? Yes, with a certain modicum of reasoning. But here's the thing. Ultimately, what it boils down to is never abandoning your principles.
Yeah.
See, this all ties in with people, again, going, well, if you don't vote for Trump, then you're voting for Hillary. How? If I don't mark on my ballot any presidential candidate, how am I voting for any presidential candidate?
You're not.
At all.
The math is not there. There is no math there. And that's part of the whole intellectually disingenuous spiel of those that are pushing for a tyranny of false unity. And it's why it's so frustrating throughout this entire election cycle is because you hear that over and over again. We heard it in '08, we heard it again in '12, and now we're really hearing it in '16. The Lion Branch Trumpvidians gathering in the Trumpvidian tabernacle are singing off-key to try and say you must bow down and worship our quaff god. Why? Why? Why do they think that Cheeto Jeebus is really good for the country? When you try and show them any evidence to the contrary, they'll stick their fingers in their ears and claim, la 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 la, Trump does no wrong. I don't know, don't care. Well, then why are you going forth and proclaiming that you are some intelligent person for supporting Trump if you're not willing to basically engage in a lofty conversation about his policy positions, or more accurately, lack thereof? You see, he can't expound upon anything because he doesn't have any core principles or beliefs. And that's what we've been trying to expose here on Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, going on the better part of a year now.
Yeah, and again, this points right to and emboldens their ability to push this crap of the lesser of two evils. I mean, weasels, because they're using it, and it's almost that's their foundation. And it's a foundation built on sand. Guess what? The tidal wave is coming. When you build your house on sand, your foundation on sand, it will always be washed away at any point in given time. Always. If you build it on a rock solid foundation, that of something, rooted in natural law, the core principles and values of what it means to be an ultimate wielder of sovereignty, yes, will that erode away over time? It could.
If you don't proactively maintain it. Yeah.
If you don't properly maintain it. Just like with any other structure, you have to have the foundation. If you don't have a sure-footed foundation, that structure will crumble. Without a doubt. It will be eroded away by weather, whatever the case is. The winds of politics decide to shift in an ugly direction. Remember that? Remember that quote from Barack Hussein Obama? Well, guess what? It seems that Trump has actually decided to get his paraglider or his parasail and hop onto that trade wind.
Well, it's because he's a quaff NATO.
Sure. And, again, it all points to he's consistently inconsistent. It's just like the interview that we saw with Steve Deese and Charles Sykes on CNN. I think it was CNN or MSNBC. I can't remember which outlet it was, but both of them pretty much reiterated what we've been saying all along and pointed to the one fact: Trump is consistently inconsistent. You don't know what this guy's going to do from one day to the next. He can say one thing and then the next day it's 1 minute to the next. One tweet to the next tweet. You don't know what's going to happen with him. Because he does that purposely to obfuscate and to keep a blindfold on the people. Why? For his own personal gain. Because if he cared about anything, if he saw any value in the United States Constitution at all, then he would be able to say that he sees value in the people. Now, he talks about, oh, well, I'm doing this because I want to get back to the United States. I want to get back to the country because they've done so much for me. Get over yourself. Get over yourself. Stop using me and everybody else that is a sovereign citizen of this United States to further your agenda. I'm not a pawn. I'm not a little puppet that you think you can manipulate. Because I guarantee you, Donald, if you or I were in the same room together and you wanted to talk negotiations with me, you'll lose. You claim to be a big winner? Wrong. You will lose. That is a guarantee. And it is also a guarantee if you were the same situation was with you and Randy, or you and our first Air Marshal Nelson Ward. In fact, it'd probably be even a worse situation if you were in that situation with him. I guarantee you.
Yeah.
Because the fact of the matter is, you're a fraud. You're a shyster. You've always been a fraud and a shyster, just like your granddaddy long before you.
Granddaddy
and everything
Trump
you put your bigly hands on.
Yeah. You know, with all this stuff in the news about Colin Kaepernick, it's amazing to see how the leftists are going out and saying we shouldn't condemn him for refusing to stand for the national anthem. Look, no one denies that he has the right to do it. However, as we've stated on numerous occasions, one must always be willing to accept the consequences for exercising one's rights. Mm-hmm. That's what it means to be self-accountable and self-responsible. Of course, the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists don't want anyone, except those who disagree with them, to be held accountable for anything. It's part of their plan to fundamentally transform the United States. This is what's so nefarious about their scheme. It's about making people feel good when, in fact, their overarching goal is to strip and deprive the people of their fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. There really is no way around this. It's what they have been working towards so meticulously for the past century and a half now. It's why we must be vigilant with respect to proactively maintaining and safeguarding our liberties and rights. Free enterprise should cater to the wants and desires of the customers. That's what customer service is all about. Of course, the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialists don't believe in this either. They wish to control the facets of our daily lives. In that sense, they seek to micromanage everything, right down to thought. Indeed, it's why they engage in the rather dubious activity of attempting to criminalize certain thought processes, particularly when it's in disagreement with their overarching worldview. Whatever happens to this Kaepernick creature, it's on himself. He is the one that chose to act like a childish barbarian. We'll defend his right to say whatever he wants, so long as it doesn't infringe upon anyone else's rights. That's the way our system works. After all, the natural law tenets, or the natural order of things, forms the bedrock foundation of this constitutionally endowed federalist representative republic of ours, unless and until we're willing to accept this, along with our responsibilities. Then we're going to continue to see the problems currently plaguing the nation worsen.
Well, here's the problem I have with Kaepernick. He makes the statement. He bases his whole action around one thing. I did this because I can't stand up and support something that represents a country that oppresses people the way that it does. Mr. Kaepernick, you make what, $128 million a year? When in the hell have you ever been oppressed? Answer that question. When have you ever been oppressed? Because you know what? I could legitimately say that I'm oppressed to a certain degree because I don't have the stature that you have. I don't make $128 million a year. So using your logic, I should be more pissed off at the fact that I'm being oppressed because you make that kind of money. Really? How does that work? No sane person in their right mind, and again, let's use a legal term here, reasonable person standard. No reasonable person will ever be able to make that argument in court. Because why? The courts would look at it and say, well, here's the deal. You had the opportunity, just like everybody else in this country has the opportunity to make something of yourself. If something happens to where that opportunity is taken away from you, whether it's due to injury or whether because you simply don't pursue it, you cannot say that you're being oppressed because you squandered the opportunity or you failed to act on the opportunity when it was presented to you. People need to get off their high horses about this oppression crap. You want something, you want this, you want that, work for it. Earn it. Put the effort into it. Don't sit back and mooch off of me and Randy or anybody else who pays their taxes.
And this is identity politics. It's what they always play. It's what they've always tried to do, and it's why it's so nefarious. It goes against everything that we hold near and dear in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. And that's why the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists engage in it. It's because they are, once again, trying to weaken the bedrock foundation of this country. They know that they cannot literally stand up against it, and so therefore they'll try anything to try and just tear us apart, to divide and conquer us, to pit American citizen against American citizen, because they're hoping that we'll tear out each other's jugulars and just make the nation anemic so they can waltz in and force their incrementalized socialism in at a faster rate. That's their overarching goal. That's what they've been working towards, and they're not going to back down from that. It's why they think they see a light at the end of the tunnel and that they can just reach forth and that victory is within grasp for them. But it's not. It's not. And, you know, since today is Labor Day, I think it's important that we point something out about this holiday. I've already done a solo flight today on it, but you've got to know that it's rooted in one of the old communist ideas of pushing for unions and various other collectivist entities. Much like May Day is for the communists, Labor Day represents something of a rally cry for the socialists. In fact, Hillary Clinton and the Democrats have used this as an opportunity to push their twisted agenda. If there's one thing that points out the clear difference between constitutionalists and the socialists, it's that the socialists attempt to politicize everything, whereas we don't. Maybe we need to start to.
Well, and here's the thing. This is how Fabianism is defeated. And we've mentioned this before. Fight fire with fire. And a perfect analogy for this is if anybody understands how oil field fires are taken care of, how they extinguish those fires when an oil well catches a blaze. What's the easiest way to do? How do you get rid of a fire? You starve it, you deprive it of the main necessity that it needs to keep burning. You deprive it of oxygen. If you go to an oil well that's caught on fire, you create such an explosion, or you essentially blow it up. You're not blowing up the oil well itself. You are blowing up the source to fuel that fire. You are depleting the oxygen in an instantaneous and expedient fashion to where the fire, it goes away. It's the same thing with Fabianism. It is a fire that is out of control. And the only way to extinguish those flames, you have to deprive it of its source, its oxygen source, so to speak. And what its oxygen source is, again, we point back to moral relativism, political correctness, and revisionist history. You extinguish those sources of quote-unquote oxygen, it goes away. The fire dies.
And
That's what
here's
we
the
have to
funny
do.
thing. Here's the funny thing. Labor Day is supposed to celebrate the essential contribution workers make to our, note this, collective wealth and well-being. At least that's how the Democrats have framed it. Truth be told, what should be celebrated is the individual ingenuity of the sovereign citizen. Our nation is about being able to reach whatever height we set our mind to. That's something that's unique in America. Our entire system was designed in such a way as to allow this to occur. However, the way the government operates now, it intentionally punishes those who seek to achieve greater success. Why? Because the left wants us to be a collective, disregarding the fact that the individual fibers are what truly enhance the societal fabric of the United States. This all falls into the propagandistic narrative of the left. Of course, the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media lap this stuff up. They have been willing participants in trying to deceive the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. That's been their goal since the days of William Randolph Hearst and his newspaper conglomerate at the turn of the 20th century. It's disgusting. But if you think that the current GOP candidate is well suited to fight this battle for the hearts and souls of the American people, you're gravely mistaken. Recall that Trump has repeatedly called to transform the Republican Party into a workers' party. Folks, this falls into the dangerous arena of identity politics. Equal protection under the law is supposed to strictly prohibit this sort of balkanization, which truly has no place in an open, honest, and above all free society like that of the United States. There's no way around this at all, folks, truly not.
Well, let's start depriving their oxygen on this. I say, again, using their tactics of labeling and revisionism and not so much political correctness, but to a certain degree it is. Let's redefine what Labor Day represents. Let's say from here on out and celebrate Labor Day as giving thanks or celebrating those individuals who during World War II made sacrifices with their families to go to work to provide and make military equipment for our military to defeat the Nazis.
And the Japanese, yep.
And the Japanese and the Italians. Let's utilize that aspect, but let's take it incrementally through history from that point on forward. Let's take it and look at the ingenuity of the individuals, like my great uncle who worked at General Motors during in between the World War II and the Korean War, to where he worked on military projects, coming up with conical formulas and such in order to create munitions, better munitions, so that we can vanquish our foes and those that want to deride and destroy our liberties. Let's honor those individuals on Labor Day. Screw the communist agenda. We're taking Labor Day and we're redefining it in terms of natural law tenets and true conservative principles and values. Much like we need to do with every other bullcrap holiday that they have. They want to put them out there. They want people to celebrate it. Fine. We're going to celebrate it. We're going to redefine them. Guess what, folks? There goes their oxygen for their fire that they're wanting to fan the flames with.
And you know what else it comes down to, Jeremy, is the trustworthiness of the candidates. In 2016, neither one of these fools is what I'd call trustworthy. They're in it for their own agendas or for their own self-enrichment. Take, for instance, the fact that Trump continues to change his narrative on immigration reform. I know that we mentioned this in an earlier segment, but I think it's a good time as any to further flesh out some of the recent developments with respect to this topic. Giuliani has come forth and proclaim that Trump no longer wants mass deportations. Remember, folks, we said that Trump would engage in this sort of duplicity. He's never once been serious about it. Of course, the Lion Branch Trumpidians will find excuse after excuse to be apologists for Cheeto Jeebus. It's disgusting to see how far they're willing to go to proclaim that he's the leader that America needs. It's just not true. It clearly demonstrates that Trump, contrary to the vociferous contentions of his blind following, doesn't give a damn about the sanctity of America. Why should he? Back in 2012, he wrote a piece saying we shouldn't even have borders. This is the way that the business world needs to think and operate, according to him. Do you honestly think he'd ever change his position on that when clearly it works to his benefit? Of course not. Again, this ties into what sacked Trump campaign leader Paul Manafort said during the primary process. Recall that he went before the Republican top brass and reassured them that Trump was just acting on stage, that he didn't really mean a thing he said. Well, Giuliani is further supporting that contention. We've warned about this over and over again, yet the Trumpidians say they don't care. I don't know why they refuse to look at the truth. In fact, I think that's one of the most frustrating and infuriating aspects of this entire electoral process thus far. I think there's going to be a major reckoning once this is all done and settled. People are going to have to realize that this sort of political scheming doesn't work. It just further polarizes us and pits us against one another. That's why George Washington warned us not to break into disparate competing factions, because in the end, we lose sight of what truly matters in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. That overarching vision is none other than the tenets contained within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution. And that is why you must foster that fluent and working knowledge and understanding of it.
So let me get this straight. Trump says it's pretty much impossible now to just uproot people and deport them. But wait a second, didn't John, I didn't get the memo from the mailman Kasich, say the same thing on the debate stage, and Trump railed against him on it and said he was pretty much a fool, but now Trump adopts that policy? So here's a question. Let's look at the candidates that were on the stage this election cycle. Individually, John Kasich with the whole immigration thing. Well, you can't bring up family, it's doing this, you can't do it. Trump was against that, and now he's for it. Trump was against Romney, but now he's for it. He was against this, now he's for it. He was against Christie, but yet he got the endorsement of Christie, now he's for it. Here's the question. When is Trump going to adopt Ted Cruz's principles? Oh, never. Wait. Never. Why? Because he's still hell-bent on attacking Ted Cruz, even though he's not in the running anymore. He spends just as much time frothing at the mouth and giving this bovine crap out of his quaff-laden, gaping skull cave against Cruz, tweeting and attacking him and his family continuously still. But all the other candidates, he's pretty much adopt certain points from them. He's called them establishment, but he's adopted them. Why is this? Why does he not adopt Ted Cruz? And I'll tell you why right now. Because Ted Cruz, and again, folks, the whole Never Trump movement is not about Cruz. It's about being anti-Constitution. It's about being always Constitution and you can't negotiate my rights away. Anti-Trump, anti-Hillary, anti-evil. Cruz is just a very, very small part of that. But here's the thing. Cruz has never wavered away from the constitutional principles. Never. Not once. Not once. And for Trump to adopt anything, any kind of principle whatsoever that comes from Cruz would be a complete and utter destruction of his own principles and foundations that he's built his lies on. It would completely destroy him. So he's not going to do it. But yet he'll adopt certain points from this candidate. Oh, I'll just take from this candidate. I like his idea on this. I don't like anything else, but I'll just take this. He's developing a hodgepodge of an establishment macrame is what it is. That's all he's doing. Why? Nobody knows. It doesn't make any sense for him to do that.
We know why. We know he does it to try and build himself up, to try and make himself appear acceptable to anybody and everybody. He does exactly what politicians always do, and that is to custom tailor their message to a particular audience. Yes. And so it doesn't matter to what he believes, because he doesn't believe anything. It's just whatever is necessary at the time to propel him into the position that he's trying to foster. It's not anything that he believes. It never has been, and it never will be with him.
No. What it is it's a perpetual game of two-card Monty. He's, look at this hand over here, and he's doing all these things. And again, like you mentioned, the whole thing that propelled and catapulted his so-called success in this campaign was, I'm going to build a wall and Mexico is going to pay for it. That's it. That's the only thing that people have latched onto. And he's doing that. He created the diversion and the balkanization in order to distract and take the attention away from the people of him being a shill and a plant for the Fabians. Mm. And at the same time, he's running that gamut. That's one of the two cards in this perpetual game of two-card Monty. The other card
he even cheats at two-card Monties. He even cheats at that, because he'll pull a third card out of his hair.
Yes,
it's just the way he is.
Here's the other card to that everybody sees, but they really don't understand it's the third card. He's doing this to make money. Mm-hmm. That's all this has ever been about for him. Again, he is a walking, talking, unfortunately breathing and breeding snake oil salesman. He is a billboard for his own fantasy.
Think about something else that he's done too, though. Think about how he's gone out and discredited people like Sean Wannity, people like Lush Bimbo, people like Michael Wiener Savage and Laura Inkamp.
That's all the card he pulls out of his sleeve.
Right, but here it comes. Because what he's trying to do is build up a media empire. What better way to destroy Rush Limbaugh's listener base, to then try and attract them into Trump News Network? What better way than to take all of these discredited people like Roger Ailes and bring them in? That's why he brought Stephen K. Bannon onto his campaign. It wasn't for any type of political maneuvering. It was to set up Trump News Network. That is his ulterior motive. That's why he's running, and he sees this as a cash cow to thereby perpetually fuel his family and to take on the media so that he can always have the attention that he desires, and that helps stoke some of that narcissistic personality disorder that he has. And so it feeds that, fuels that, and allows him to continue with this idea of limitless just coverage that would be pro-Trump. A bit like Bloomberg has done with his media thing.
Yeah, but here's the thing, Randy. Here's the thing, and this is a beautiful thing. It's a flawed plan.
Starting to sound like Trump.
It's a flawed plan. You know why? Because we exist.
People see through it.
Because we exist. He wants to build this media empire. The only way you can have a complete and total empire is if you go unchallenged. If you are dominant. Guess what? Every single thing that he does during the election and afterwards, regardless of the turnout, if some cosmic twist of quafic fate allows him to become president, it's going to get 10 times harder for him, because we exist. Because not only just you and I and Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, but our listener base, our first-class passengers. We exist. We will not be discounted. We are not going to go away. We've already made that promise, and we've taken that oath. We are going nowhere. So therefore, his quest, his quaffic quest to build this media empire, again, is going to be nothing but a house of cards that's going to get knocked over, and it's going to just be a scattery mess because we exist. We're not going to allow that to happen.
No,
he's diminishing Lush Bimbo's listener base. Guess what? He can diminish the listener base. They're not going to go to him. They're going to go to us. They're going to go to people like Steve Deese, people like Mark Levin, and Charlie Sykes.
Right.
See,
and John Ziegler being the other one.
Yes, because we exist. We are essentially, he was right about one thing. He is going to build a wall. He's built that wall. That wall of opposition to himself. That's us. And you know what? Mexico didn't pay for it, and they're not going to pay for it. Unfortunately, the American people are going to have to foot the bill for that. Why? Not monetarily speaking, not with coinage or legal tender, but they're going to pay for it because of the neglect of their own principles and the abandoning of such. That's going to be the payment tendered for this.
Right. Now, I think the major problem that we face is the attempt to make our political system all about populism. This is one of those dangerous isms that really seeks to unravel the societal framework of the United States.
That depends on what your that depends on what your definition of ism is.
Well, yeah, thank you, Clinton. But anyway, I think it is for that reason that Trump embraced it. Of course, he's just looking to do this for his own personal gain. I highly doubt that he's doing this for any pure love of the country. Trump always has and always will care only about himself. That's just the way he's always been. Yet when you stop and think about it, the only thing that truly matters when it comes to our system of polity is the Constitution. It's what defines us both as a nation and as a people. There's no way around that. And the major catastrophe of this election cycle is that neither one of the mainstay candidates believes in it. They're just looking to divide us and gain something for themselves. This is something we can ill afford to allow to come to fruition, particularly when you consider that the United States is in the midst of an identity crisis coupled with a slew of constitutional crises. We must remember that the duty, obligation, and above all responsibility of placing this nation back onto the path to prosperity falls squarely on our shoulders. That's the way that our founding fathers intended for this nation to operate. It's the way that freedom flourishes. Yet we have seemingly become afraid of freedom and self-responsibility. It's as though we've turned our backs on our fundamental principles. That is not something that we can allow. It is something we cannot, must not, and will not tolerate in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. With that said, it's time for us to begin our descent. I'm going to go ahead and send the flight attendant back for one last round of alcohol. Folks, we assure you that she won't make a fiasco out of it. She's just there to pour your drink. As always, I'm Randy Wright, and I've been your captain. Joining me has been my first officer, Jeremy Grapenton. We want to thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer, and we invite you to leave any questions, comments, or concerns you may have either here on our YouTube page or our Google Plus page or even on our Facebook page. And on top of that, we invite you to follow us at Twitter with the Twitter handle @RadioAviationEX. One more time, folks, that's @RadioAviationEX. There, you'll find our departure board that lists Jeremy and yours truly's personal Twitter accounts, the Blogspot account that now carries our audio-only format so that you can download our episodes as MP3s or however you want to listen at your own leisure. And then there is the Cafe Press account. Jeremy, tell them a bit about the Cafe Press account.
Oh boy. Well, of course, as mentioned before, we have a lot of novelties and various different items that you could purchase to show your support for the show, show your support for yourself. Folks, if anybody tries to deride or force you to choose the lesser of two evils of the novelties. I assure you, none of our novelties or products are evil. Just tell them to go to hell and make your purchase anyways. And God forbid our flight attendant fail again to take proper inventory. If she does, well, we'll just push her out of the plane.
Well, she's off just trying to join a union to try and say that Labor Day is about that.
Yeah, well, that's going to get her pushed out of the plane anyway. So,
yes, it clearly is. As always, folks, thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer. We'll see you again next time. Do take care.